Hello. In this video, my aim is to demystify rigging in one video. Okay, so we're going to talk about these step by step. I'll show some examples. I was asked to fix this particular gecko. The original question was, why is it doing, pardon me, I think the original question is, why was it doing that? And other stuff. And it also isn't quite oriented, as we can see there. Okay, so demystify rigging. First thing, transforms on everything, almost everything. Okay, first day of class, I got up on top of my chair and I jumped up and down and had you all repeat this mantra: freeze transforms on everything. So that needs to happen, or due to the nature of transformation matrices and all that sort of crap, if things aren't frozen, eventually you're going to find stuff kind of drifting in your rigs. Now, there are times when we don't freeze, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. Okay, save to new file often. Never overwrite a rig unless you've got a backup, because things can go south. And I usually do it before a major event in rigging, like adding all the controllers, or deleting history, or just exporting weights, or it's just really good to have landmarks, points in time where you can go back. You will make mistakes. Okay. Now, joints. First we place them. Then we freeze the transforms. Now, freezing the transforms zeroes out rotations. So for instance, let's just make a joint chain here. Okay, so I'm going to rotate and move. So just like you would if you were placing a joint, you want to get it, exactly the right place. Okay, so if we look at the top joint and we pick walk down, this is with the arrow key, we can see that there are different transforms, rotations. Generally, you won't have scale issues unless you do the scale intentionally, but I'll check for that as well. So these joints are not, the transforms have not happened yet. So what do the freeze transforms do? Well, the main thing is it's going to zero out our rotations. Okay, so let's select this and let's select the hierarchy. And let's freeze the transforms. Now, it's also good to know, edit, modify, freeze transforms. It's always good to know, Control-Shift-Click on the option box. When you click on this, I would recommend saving the option box with it if you add it to your shelf, because you want to make sure that everything is working. I rarely don't have to do, usually don't have to do scale, but if you were to save a transformation icon and it was in this state, well, then it wouldn't do that stuff. So generally, I save this with the options on. Notice all the rotations. So select this, hierarchy, freeze transformations, option box, freeze transforms, and now everything, all the rotations are zeroed. Now, we do have translations on the top, the root of the joint. And the children of the root, unless we orient. Okay, so the joint orient command, we do that after we do the freeze transforms. That's going to be with the joint orient. Now, notice again, these are all, they'll have 3 values on them. You select the hierarchy. I'm going to reset the settings and then apply. So now these transforms are frozen. The root of the chain or branch of the chain may have up to 3 translational values. And if we pick walk down, should only have 1 translate value. Now these translate values, I'm going to click on W, and I'm also going to go here and I'm going to align my axis to the object as opposed to the world. Okay, so as we pick walk down, the X joint is pointing down to its next child. We can also visualize that with the rotation. Now, okay, and then the next thing we're going to do, I should probably put this local rotation axis. That's this one here. Let's select the hierarchy. And let's click the local rotation axes. And so now we can visualize them all at the same time. This is a toggle. Whatever select is going to go off and on. Display, transform display, local rotation axes. Okay, now this is the default that Maya ships with. You can change your rotation or your orientation not preferences, but your joint rotation orders. You can change that at any time, depending on what's the most useful case for the particular joint. We're not really covering that in this class because learning the orientation stuff is enough. We'll just settle with the default of X. Okay. Now, a root will have up to 3 transforms. Okay, so there's the 3 transforms. This could also be called a branch. A branch parent could have up to 3 transforms. So for instance, this leg here, it is a branch from a root, and it can have up to 3 transforms. We don't want it to have rotations though. And a branch child should only have 1 transform. Okay. All right. Now, so we talked about that. X is default. A branch child should only have 1, like that. Now, in order to have this condition, we need to have gone back and freeze the transforms on them. Okay, this won't work unless we do this first. Now there's some other conditions when you can't freeze transforms. If a joint has a keyframe, you can't freeze a transform. If it's bound to a skin, you can't do a transform if it's got a constraint. Or if it has any other incoming connections. I guess we could say you could, but maybe you shouldn't, would be a safe bet for now. Okay. So when we add and connect stuff, so I'm just going to move this out of the way. I might refer to it again later. Okay. So when you add and connect stuff, like for instance, if you add a controller, everything must be at zero pose. What you'll want to do is you'll want to test, okay? So when I'm testing something like a joint, like for instance, let's test this one. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to check the rotation, make sure it works right. Okay, so this is an intentional rotate transform. Okay, it works as expected. Next thing I'm going to do is hit 0 and I'm going to undo it. Now, when I say save to a new file, this is like maybe you've tested all the transforms on a limb, or maybe you leave that up to you. But test, and that'd also be testing the joints as well. So, for instance, if I do this, testing the controller, also test the joints. Right, now that wasn't completely lined up, and the reason I know that is because we've got 3 transforms here. It's not always the best case scenario to have this, and the way we get around that is by adding null group nodes. We can also do stuff with parent matrix nodes, but we'll cover that later. So an animator wants to rotate something. That's cool, but you would also like the joints to be behaving the same way. That's not the end of the world if it doesn't. But the reason this is not doing that is because I'll go to this. Right arm control. We don't have a parent group. The parent groups fix all this, discussed in previous assignments. Okay. Now, if you have problems, here's where I can hopefully help. And you know what? I better, before you get bored and quit, I'm going to talk about the joints again. Talk about if you can't freeze frames, already did. Talked about testing. Now problems. I'm going to definitely talk about the problems, pinpoint where these are. If an art director asks for changes, like straighten the Gecko tail, make an IK and FK controller for the animators, and I'm going to go one step further with this, instead of a simple control. These light up because they are commands and no. And I guess I probably didn't emphasize this part enough in the assignment, the instead part. Okay, be prepared to delete existing constraints. Now, the good thing is when we make changes, if we've already gone through the trouble of waiting, which is usually first thing I do after binding a skeleton, and I would do this before adding any controllers, we're going to export the weights. Make sure you do it here under Deform, Export and Import Weights. Make sure you're at the 0 pose. Then you delete the history. Now, if you delete the history at any time, and if the geometry is not in its 0 pose, then when you delete the history, it'll be unbound and it'll be in that pose, which is how we semi-straighten the tail. Fix your stuff, then rebind. So bind the skin back to the joints, and then import your weights. And then you get all that work you did back on your weights. Okay. All right. Now I'll talk about this stuff in a bit, but now let's get into this part. Okay. Now I know that there are issues with this particular rig, and so let's just talk about this. So I'll move this out of the way for now, or better yet, I'll just put it there. Okay, so this is the bind skeleton. So I'm going to turn the IK and FK skeletons off. This is the bind skeleton here. So it's got constraints, but have to ask yourself, how many constraints does it have? Open this back up again. Check for channel block, check in the channel blocks, node editor, hypergraphics editor for unnecessary connections. Okay, so we know that an IKFK rig, the bind skeleton, is simultaneously orient constrained to both the IK arm chain and the FK arm chain. But if I check each joint here, you can see that there's another constraint happening. So this is the left arm control. And if I open that up, I think it's this one here. That might be it. So these were from a previous rig. So I'm just going to delete those. I'm not using those right now. And then I can delete that later. I guess it must be this rig. Yeah. Okay. So the FK controls are going to go on to the FK control chain. Okay, so let's come back here. And now let's look at the node editor. Display, Windows, node editor. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add each one of these joints. I'm going to clear the screen, and then I'm going to add selected. So I've got each one of these here. Now for each one of these, I could come in and I could say left clavicle. So let's look at the, I'm going to set these up like this. Now I can make a bookmark. Let's create a bookmark. Just call it L arm. Okay, so no matter what happens, I should be able to go back to this by just clicking left arm. Now what I'm going to do is on the left arm, I should have selected the clavicle as well. I guess I can do that. We don't need a clavicle, incidentally, for an IKFK joint chain, but it's not going to hurt anything, but we just don't need it. Let's create this bookmark again. Yeah, so let's just create a new one. Create bookmark, lab. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is check incoming connections on the left clavicle. And so if I look at it, now this creates a bunch of spaghetti here that we don't necessarily need. But if we hit the 3 key or click on this, so we can expand these, and we can also expand that. Okay, so this is the constraint itself. And if we go down here to the target, let's zoom in. Okay, so we've got 3 targets coming in. So we've got the left clavicle FK, got the left clavicle IK, that's correct. But we also have left clavicle control. So I can tell that that's what's happening here in the node editor by looking at incoming connections. We can also do incoming outgoing or just output connections. And again, select the clavicle. I can check it here. I can see that there's an orient constraint associated, and I'm seeing 3 of them, and so on and so forth. I can do that back down the chain. Now, when I did this, it kind of messed up my graph, so I can just go to bookmarks and just go back here. So there I am back where I was. So if you want to use the node editor for creating connections, things like that, you could always create this first connection and then go back to it. So arm, so we can just add another one here, bookmarks, arm. There we go. Well, it's going to be named here, but it's going to show up there. But anyway, we can always select the one we want. And we can rename a tab too. So you can rename tabs, and you can save bookmarks. Let's also look at the hypergraph hierarchy. I use this a lot. I used to use it all the time. I don't use it as much because as I used to, because for quite some time, rigging artists have primarily stay in the outliner. And so I will do that just to, just so I can kind of hang with the crowd, I guess. But honestly, I think visualization, and you get used to it, of how to work with it. But we can also go to the hypergraph hierarchy. And let's just select these again. And these should be showing up here. Oh, there they are. So here's everything actually that is showing. So the hypergraph hierarchy is a little different because it's showing you everything that is there. Now, by default, it comes like this, and it sets up the visualization for you. You can click here and have a freeform visualization, and so then I can take like the left arm clavicle, rather. And if I wanted to have like the IK and FK joints, select one of those. There's going to be the skeleton. Shift click and hide the tail. I can hide the right. I can hide the legs. And, this will kind of help clear things up. I can hide the mouth, I can hide the head, even the neck, but I need everything else here. Okay, so left clavicle IK, left clavicle FK. So left clavicle FK is down here. I could move this, zoom in on it. And then let's do the left clavicle IK. Okay, so here we can come up and I think what I'll do is set this one in the center. So this is what I will do often when I'm setting up orientations. So first of all, now these are the joints. And then these here are orient constraints. So I'm going to take all of the orient constraints and I'm just going to sort of push them out of the way. I've got some here too. Now this is a little tedious, but it can save you some time. Or it can maybe save you some headache. Maybe headache's more valuable than time. So now if I get rid of these constraints, vectors, constraints, all that, then I've got this, that, this, and that. Okay. So with all these lined up, if I wanted to make my constraints, it might be easier for you to visualize things when you're making them. And maybe put the constraints down there. And of course, if I select something like an elbow constraint, it's going to tell me what it is up there. Now I can also make a bookmark here. So create bookmark. Let's call this left. So I can always return to this. And so this is a nice visual way to set things up. You can get more precise here. This is kind of more of an overview, but this changes radically if you open something up. So we can get more precise, but we can, then we've got more stuff going on. So pick your poison. There's different ways to look at things. Note editor, make bookmarks. Same thing with hypergraph hierarchy. If something's not working, also take a step back from the videos, the tutorials, the step-by-step thing, and ask why something is or isn't happening. If you rotate something and it's not rotating, why is it not rotating? It all depends on what it is or isn't connected to. Now, another thing, adding an IK pull vector control will make the joints move a little bit unless the pull vector control is placed along the same triangular plane as the joints. And in the video, I show you how to do that by just creating a polygon on top of the joints and then taking let's see, then I'm making an edge and goes through, and then I cut the one plane and I'm gonna make the edge, point constrain them there, snap them, and then I expand it, and that's how I can find like 100% accurately. And you also have to put it and put well behind or in front. Joints. Pull vector control. Now, this isn't the worst thing in the world as long as it's not extreme. But it is better to if you make it 100%, certainly like on a portfolio rig, or like you want an A or extra credit kind of stuff for a grade. All that being said, I usually add my pull vector controls at the very end. Now, another thing, they can be placed 100% accurately with scripts. Learn this for a job. I got a story there. Somebody came from a big studio to look around at our grad program. One of the people that came along was a rigging artist, or maybe a tech artist. And they saw that a particular tech artist had his pull vector placed accurately. Okay. And they were impressed that it was placed accurately. It didn't bounce. Now, you can also do this with scripts. Make it 1,000% accurate. Or, well, I'm not going to gamble. Let's just say 100. With some trigonometry math, you can code this sort of a thing and learn this for a job. That very same tech artist student later did this to his rig, and he sent it to the same people that noticed this accurate pull vector control, and he got hired there as a tech artist. So later on, he made a script that would place the pull vector controls accurately. So I wanted to highlight that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix this particular arm. There are some problems with it. So why don't we just hide that? Control H. Then we're not going to accidentally select it. Then we've got our IK and our FK. And I'm sorry to say, it's actually going to be easier to fix this without them. Just make them new. So let's just get rid of them. Now maybe I can keep one of them just as a template. Actually, yeah, why don't we do that? So this is the FK scale. I'm going to name that to template. Okay. So, so this is now a template. I'm eventually going to delete it, but at least I can see, pretty closely where the joints go. Or I could make it a reference, and that way I could kind of re-add my reconnect my bind skeleton. So here I'm going to come back and Shift H. That's now visible again. So I'm just going to come back and I'm going to turn everything off in my selection mask. Only touching joints. And I'm going to turn on my point snap. So what I can do there, I can snap this to the reference joint. This one, snap it to that reference joint. Okay, now I've got other stuff going on. I think I've got it where I want it. Yeah. It's most noticeable here. Okay. Close but no cigar. So why don't we do this? Pardon me. NURBS, curves, and polygons are Alt-1 and Alt-2 for the visibility. Let's turn off the curves. Let's turn off the geometry. And now I should be able to have a much easier time point constraining, or point snapping rather. Okay, so I've got point snap on. I'm just going to snap there. Snap there. And I'm not selecting the other one because it's a reference. Snap there. Okay, so I've got it. I got everything in the right place, and that's good enough. So now I'm going to turn this off. Don't need that. So now what we're going to do is come back to our script editor. Okay, so we placed them. Let's freeze the transforms. Do we really need to do that? Let's take this off. Yeah, we do. But before we do that, we've got to delete the constraints. And we can delete the constraints. If we come down, we can see that here. What I could do is come back to the node editor. Look at the clavicle again. I could come here and let's look at the incoming. It's the left clavicle that I want to see. Now these all come up because of parenting. So like I said, this can get really crazy, but if you try to keep it under control, you can kind of see what's happening. So again, I've got the targets. I can see that I've got 2 incoming targets. So I could, how about if we select this? I could come here, click and drag, right click and break connections. And so what that's going to do is break the connections from the constraint for the rotation. But you can still see that the orients are still there. So if I select this, that will get rid of the rotation constraints, but I still have the constraint still exists, essentially. I could delete it like that, or I could come over here and delete these. Well, I could also do that in the hypergraph. So we've got rotations, we've got to fix those. So select the hierarchy. And I'm going to go ahead and add the local rotation axes on. And let's freeze the transformations. Apply. Okay, a skin has been attached. Oh, I've got this on. Okay, so make sure we're at the 0 pose. Edit, delete by type, history, which is this icon right here. Now let's try this again. Hierarchy, freeze transformations, apply, clavicle joint has a skin attached. That's interesting. Oh, that's probably the eyes. Yeah, so if we select this, we can see that there are still skin clusters. So it's going to be the eyes. So let's take this one, delete by type history, Okay, so now select hierarchy. Freeze transformations. Okay, and that did it. So now all my transforms. Here's a branch. And then the ends. So the rotations are all gone. Or the children, rather. So now what we have to do is orient joint command. Got to do that. Orient the joints. I'm going to go with the default. Apply. Okay. So now I've got the joints oriented, and I want them all facing the same way. One way of doing that, again, is we select this, we hit F8, so it's in component mode. Turn on that question mark, and that's for local rotation axes. I can select this, and then I can rotate it around like that. That works. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just trying out these, get back into regular mode. Another way of doing that is getting into orient options, and we can take the auto orient off in the secondary, and then we can play with these settings. So let's apply. So let's try it this way, apply. Okay, that works, just the way I want it. So by changing these secondary settings and taking that off, it's kind of a shortcut to get things oriented just the way you like. Okay. Now let's just check. This is a branch, may have up to 3. It's a child, it's got 1. This is the X, the offset in X, straight down the axis. Okay, so now we're lined up. And that's what the problem was with the, oh, I actually have the joints going not the exact way I want them. Let's do this. I wanted them coming out front way. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. There we go. We're all good. Okay, so now what do we do? I'm going to take the left clavicle FK, and I'm going to send it on its merry way. Delete it. I'm also going to come to the IKFK template, or FK template. I can think so. Maybe that was the one I just deleted. Okay, that's the one I just deleted. Come back here, and let's make this purple again. Okay, that's our bind skeleton. So now what I'm going to do, so I don't need the clavicle for an IKFK chain. So I'm going to select just these 3. Actually, these 4. Control D, duplicate them. All right. So here, let's do an underscore FK. I'm going to copy that. Okay. Now I can duplicate this one. And what I'll do here is I'll select all these. Let's go to modify search and replace names. Let's replace FK with IK. Apply. So now I've got my IK controls. This one's going to have a 1 on it because that's ammonia name stuff. Okay, what I'm going to do now is select the hierarchy here. And let's turn off the local rotation axes. And let's make sure the history is deleted there. Okay. And then previously what I did while I wasn't recording, I hid, oops, the wrong ones. Control H hid these, and so then I've got the FK and then the IK skeletons. What I did there is I just made sure, like for example, went to the FK, selected all of these, right click, add selected objects, and so now they're all purple, and same thing with these, they're blue. So now what I need to do is rebind the skeleton. So I want to make sure that these are not in the same hierarchy. Let's turn these back on, Shift H. And then with these, I can do Shift P or middle mouse drag. Middle mouse drag, pull it down right there. Oh, let's try that again. Okay. So you have to kind of put it in the right place. Let's do this one, just Shift P. Okay, so now I've got the IK chains. They're out of the hierarchy. And I can just turn them off right now, the visibility. Which leaves me this chain here. Now, of course, I'd want to have the twist joints set in like these. What I could have done is just mirror these over. In fact, in another video I did that. But so now what we'll do, select the geometry, select the skeleton. Let's go to smooth bind skin. So let's apply. So now it's bound again. And then if I had saved out the weights, I would come in here and I would go to deform, and I would import the weights had I exported them. So if you import them, you just browse for a file, and this is a description of the skin cluster. So there's a weight associated to each skin cluster, and here's right to the Okay, so let's assume that I reloaded the weights, and so that takes part of the pain of rebuilding away. After I've done that, now I can reassociate these back into the hierarchy. So here I'll middle mouse drag, and I'll just put it under the clavicle. Same thing here. Under the clavicle. And I can expand again, and got my whole hierarchy set up. Now what I want to do is let's do my orient constraints. So here I'm going to go to the hypergraph. And I previously arranged these. I showed that earlier. So I arranged these. This might be a better way to do your constraints here. So the arm is being constrained to both the FK and the IK. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to select the FK first. Just select arm. Let's do an orient constraint, maintain offset, apply. There it creates the orient constraint. Arm is selected here. I can see the orient constraint. There's just one. It'll come over to this side. Orient constraint, apply. Now we can see that both constraints are there. I click here, I can see them there too. Okay, let's do that again. So let's click this side, apply, and then come to this side. And I'm going to hit G, which repeats all commands. Or repeats the last command, I'm sorry. And it's a handy way of speeding this part up. Okay, constraints are done. Before I move on, I've got to test it. So let's take the IK arm and move it. Okay, so everything is as it should be, because these are constrained to both of them, and it's inheriting the constraints equally, so that's what's putting it in the middle. So that was my deliberate moves to test. So now what I'll do is select these over here. Let's set the zeros. So everything's back at 0. We've tested it. It works good. Now's a good time to save. Save scene as. 2. Okay, now I can show the controls again. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to verify that the controls are in the position where they need to be. So this one is, that one is, and now. But these are in the same position because I used one of the previous joint chains as a reference. So that one was correct. And what happened was the actual bind skeleton got moved around in this process of reattaching the controllers. So here's where I gotta emphasize again, where everything's gotta be zeroed when you add stuff. Now, another thing I knew from checking this that so this wasn't aligned, and so I had to align it. The way I did it, just select it, press insert, and then you can move this around. If you hold V, then you can snap it. Okay, take insert off. So that's in the right place. Okay, so now we're just going to hook up the controls, and this will take a second. First, just select this, look at the controls, make sure there weren't any constraints already happening there. Now, again, these should have the group nodes that are seen in a previous lecture to turn into the finished version of this. You can see a group node right here, and that helps us so that everything is oriented correctly. That's another video, another lesson. This is just an overview of how to put this together without things getting disassociated. Or keeping things frozen, I guess would be the better word to say. All right, so let's go back here to the left arm. The bind skin and Control H to hide. And then let's start with the FK skeleton. Okay, so first of all, let's make sure that the clavicle is attached, and it's not. So we've got to do that. So then, so I did a deliberate move, and then Z to put it back, so everything's zeroed out. So I'm going to select the clavicle control. Now the gizmo's in the way, so if I hit Q, it's going to get it out of the way. Select that, and orient constraint, maintain offset, apply. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Select this, that, G, and orient constraint, this, that, G for orient, G. Okay, so now let's test these. They work, and now the offset's correct because the weight is being shared. So let's do this, that. Okay, everything works. Everything's set back to there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add let's hide the FK, and then let's show the IK. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to add a IK handle, and that's right here. So got that selected. Again, the bind skin arm is hidden, and by virtue of the layers, I'm only showing the IK part here. So we're going to click there and here, and now we've got our IK handle. Now, let's just do another test. So turn that on, and I can show these again. So I'm going to grab this, orient it, and that's looking good. And with the IK handle, okay, so I need to either point constraint or parent the IK handle to the control. So let's select the IK handle. Oh, okay, I'm looking at an IK that's already there. Okay, sorry, just confused myself a little bit. In the spirit of making sure that everything is zeroed out, let's go back. I can't handle it. Here it is. Okay. I'm going to delete this one more time, so just to make sure that I'm doing everything right. I had one previously done, so if you're, hopefully that explains what's talking about. Let's get rid of some of this stuff, or just hide it rather. One more time. I can't handle. And I'm just doing this again because I had confused myself because I already had an IK handle there. There and there. Done. Let's rename this to L IK handle. Okay, so now we're going to take this handle, and what we're going to do is we select that, and then we're going to shift select the IK control, and we will parent it. So there's the IK control. IK handle is parented, or we could point constrain it. That would probably be the better choice, but they both work. And again, this one's got a null. The null helps it so that it's everything is oriented correctly. That's what we need on everything. Right, so now I can do my final test. So I'm going to take and let's turn everything back on. Shift H. So I'm going to take the IK handle. What I'm going to do is just move it. Okay, so you can see that's moving the way it should. And then here I can take this and let's rotate that. And again, everything seems to be working very well. Everything's halfway. Now what I'll do is I'm going to move this. Feels a little risky, but I'm going to, and yeah, everything's working good. Okay, very important. Next thing, let's undo that. Undo that. Yeah, gotta make sure everything is 0. That's 0, 0, 0. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the Gecko is fixed as far as the IKFK chain. What we had before is there were extra constraints to the previous rig, and the left arm had been moved around. Things were moved. They weren't at 0 when objects were placed. I'm 1,000% sure that was what happened. And, you know, everybody makes mistakes rigging, especially when you're starting. My aim is just to reinforce here what you need to do. And it all goes back to the joints and the freeze transform, orient constraint, all that. If you got the joints and the weights done properly, everything, you've got a perfect foundation to build upon. So I hope that helps, and I hope you all have a great day. See you later.